Clock is ticking, America. That dire warning from Canada. An article and a book both say the end of America is coming, just years away, in fact. First, the book. Canadian author Stephen Marsh warns in The Next Civil War, Dispatches from the American Future, the United States is coming to an end. The question is how? And this in the country's largest newspaper, the Globe and Mail, by a Canadian political scientist. By 2025, American democracy could collapse, causing extreme domestic political instability, including widespread civil violence. The country could be governed by a right-wing dictatorship. Pretty dire indeed, especially for a neighbor that, well, prides itself on being so nice, it's Canada nice. So that's where we have some more good news for you on a story we thought we'd touch again that we brought to you on Friday. Those maskless partying Canadians stranded in Mexico. Who can forget them, right? Well, we're glad to report they have landed back home. The party is over. So gather your e-cigarettes and all other personal items. The CDC saying today, by the way, that Americans should not travel to Canada due to COVID. So that's a lot to digest. And we're going to bring in former State Department Senior Advisor Christian Whiton to join us for more on this conversation and help us apparently save our democracy. Christian, are these two authors trying to sell papers, or do you think they have something?
Yeah, I think they're trying to sell papers and books. The scary thing is I think what you're seeing from them is actually reflected from the left here in the United States, possibly also from the White House, which may be believing its own talking points. If you dig back to what these people really are saying, why they think American democracy is unfolding, it's not, for example, the politicization of the FBI. It's not the sort of attack on out-of-the-closet conservatives in the military. What they're saying is that the Senate's unwillingness to pass what they call voting rights legislation, which would enshrine some of the things that have put clouds over the accuracy of elections, that the inability to do that is somehow leading to a right-wing takeover in America, date 2025.
Well, there are, I think in a poll we saw 3 out of 5 worry about violence, especially after the 2024 election. And you saw the subheader of that one article there. The U.S. is becoming increasingly ungovernable, and some experts believe it could descend into civil war. Does the State Department pay attention to these things, what other countries think of us?
Yes, to an extent it does. And the State Department itself, of course, the workforce there leans left, has a globalist view of the world, so probably share some of these concerns. And you saw this in the Democracy Summit that Joe Biden convened virtually, of course, in December in Washington, where it wasn't really about accountable government in the way that Americans traditionally think about it. It was about woke neoliberal government, this view that, again, that the setbacks to democracy that most Americans would perceive, for example, Antifa rioting in city after city after city and facing no real consequence, but the lack of willingness by countries like Hungary and Poland to enact woke progressive legislation is being seen as a setback to democracy.
So the author is a 40-year scholar of violent conflict, and it was actually a very long and thorough and somewhat, I guess you could say, thoughtful column, Christian, but it seemed to point more to internal issues. And I thought about the poll that we showed as well that found 8 in 10 Americans are concerned about the future of American democracy. Is some of this coming internally, I think? Are they getting this from us?
I think they're getting a lot of it from us. It wouldn't surprise me if it's echoed by the academic left in Canada, which is even more, at least historically, more left than the United States. Yeah, if you look at the language coming from the United States, I mean, it's up to you. Was January 6th a riot, or was it insurrection? An insurrection that had no real plan to take over the government, not really the intent to do so, and no weapons at all, no contact with the military, no plan to take over the media, the things that typically you would think about if you were going to mount an insurrection. Again, I mentioned the politicization of previously non-political institutions in the United States, the breakdown of institutions in the United States, the politicization of everything. They're not concerned about that. They're concerned about, again, the unwillingness of the Senate to do this law. Incidentally, that so-called Voting Rights Act, The opposition to that isn't just right-wing Republicans. It's bipartisan. It's likely that Kristen Sinema, senator from Arizona, and Joe Manchin, the Democrat senator from West Virginia, also oppose the idea of eliminating the filibuster to pass that law. So this is a law that only has 48 senators. The lack of its inability to pass and get to Joe Biden's desk is democracy in action. And these left-wing writers are saying, no, this is a dire threat to democracy.
Would you say insurrection versus coup then, Christian? To your point?
Well,
I mean, it was an insurrection, right? I mean, it was a violent uprising against the government.
It was not.
It was not a violent uprising?
No plausible.
No, I'm saying so a coup would be more to overthrow it, is what you're saying.
We're talking January 6th. I would say that was a riot.
It wasn't
just a riot.
Insurrection.
I don't think there was any serious plan to. No, it was not. There was no coherent, serious plan to take over the United States government. It would be a pretty neat trick to do that with zero firearms or weapons up against a nation with a military of more than 1 million people, a gargantuan police force, including the Capitol Police, have larger budget than the city of Atlanta. They only have to look after a couple of square miles, and they do a terrible job at it.
Well, we'll leave Canada's, perception in Canada to the north, and we'll just continue to enjoy the hockey for now. Christian Whiton, former State Department senior advisor. Thanks very much.
Poutine.
Yeah. All right,
Thank you.
Leah Thomas.